Hello guys, and finally Russia is back to the USSR just as Putin and millions who support him wanted. In Russia, they reintroduce Soviet aircraft, all in this desperate effort to try and solve a problem with growing shortage of various planes for the passenger traffic. First of all, the Kremlin expected that they will not need to survive for a long period of time under sanctions because they hoped a blitzkrieg was possible. When this idea was totally ruined by the Ukrainian armed forces, they began restoring, trying to smuggle some parts for the aircraft. They actually stole a lot of planes that were on the territory of Russia from different companies at the moment of the full-scale invasion, but now even that is over. And during winter, they had a lot of minor accidents and 3 really big. The last one happened on the old Boeing, which was supposed to travel from Magadan to Moscow, but its engine collapsed. Honestly, I think the fact that now Ukrainian drones control the airspace above Russia and they have a lot of cancelled flights and closed airports is actually good for the survival of Russians who are still risky enough to try and travel this old Soviet crap. And also, let's discuss a little bit now my favorite speech in Davos, and I'm sorry, but that is the one of President Zelenskyy. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see Putin in The Hague, subscribe, share these videos to spread the truth. Of course, it's really good that no official people are present in Davos from Russia, but even if they wanted to, perhaps they don't have enough safe aircraft. Recently, a very important major accident was reported by all the Russian media when an old Boeing that belonged to Russian aviation company had a serious failure of engine just as it wanted to set off in Magadan to travel to Moscow. And that was perhaps the last drop that persuaded the Kremlin they need to reintroduce old Soviet aircraft. This is another example of this Russian newspeak when they describe something really awful for a normal country, like using old aircraft that was not operating because it was old, it was not properly functioning, and returning it to work for people. They describe it as reintroduction, not as a totally dangerous move, which of course does not care about the human life. That is the Kremlin approach in general. So they decided to reintroduce this aircraft after 3 major accidents took place during this winter. One on that flight Moscow-Magadan, the second one on Moscow-Cuba, and another one traveled from Moscow to Phuket. Once again, the fact that we cancel hundreds of their flights is actually a very good thing to protect Russians from flying that coffins. They often describe their aircraft as flying coffins. So right now, what they do, they restore old Soviet aircraft that has decades, perhaps these planes are older than all the passengers on board of them. And that is the only way they can address the growing shortage of the Russian airline fleet. And what's important, they constantly try to hide this size of the problem because, first of all, at the beginning, they thought that all these sanctions will not last long because Ukraine will surrender, Russia will get everything they want, including maybe even the Ukrainian aircraft. Then, when the full-scale war started developing and the sanctions became more serious, what they did, they stole a lot of aircraft from various companies that were rented to the Russian airlines, and they simply did not return them back to the companies. These were hundreds. This cost a lot to the companies that lost this aircraft, and I'm sure that is also one of the reasons why nobody wants to cooperate with the Kremlin, even illegally. Then they started promising the Russian population that they will build their own aircraft because like Russian planes are way better than all the other. Attention, please. At the moment of the full-scale invasion, Russia operated like a lot of aircraft, and 75% of their commercial aircraft were built in the United States, in the European Union, and in Canada. Once again, just feel it. They describe themselves as a totally independent nation that can build and do everything better than anyone else. And in reality, 75% of their aviation was built in the United States, in Canada, or in the European Union. And here I need to remind you that, of course, many countries use aircraft from these producers. That's logical. But they claim to be heirs of the Soviet constructors, when the majority of them were Ukrainians, like An's famous aircraft, or many. And they are so fake because they still describe themselves as the best aviation constructors, space conquerors, when in reality all they can do is try to restore old Soviet crap. Thumbs up for that. Share these videos to spread the truth. That is super important. So they promise that they will build 127 aircraft per year, and all they managed during these 4 years of the failed blitzkrieg, like 12 or something. And the decision is something that would make people in any other free country definitely freak out about this total irresponsibility of the government. They reconstruct, revive, maintain this old Soviet crap. Previously, they were trying to smuggle some details, but that is a very difficult, some parts, I'm sorry, of the aircraft, but that's a difficult process. And then they started simply cannibalizing aircraft when one is fully destroyed, that would use the parts of it to maintain the other one. And finally they reached to the museums of the Soviet Union. Unbelievable. And I'm really happy that President Zelenskyy made it to Davos. I did like some speeches previously. I watched them very attentively, and as you may guess, it's not the one of the President of the United States, but I did like Carney's speech and Macron. I think he looks really cool in that aviator's glasses, but Zelenskyy was my favorite speaker, not because I'm Ukrainian. Let me know if you watched, what did you like about the speakers, the atmosphere, or what you didn't like. But he shared a lot of things that we feel in Ukraine. First of all, that the best way to help Ukraine is not to protect our energy infrastructure or to help us survive after this totally violent and illegal Russian attacks. The best way is to destroy Russia missile production sites, and we know the locations. All we need is long-range missiles. And somehow people stop talking about that, even though at the end of 2025 we were really close to the decision, and then Putin phoned Trump and everything froze. Also, I totally agree with that the best way is, you all know, defeat and demilitarize Russia, destroying their military arsenals, sites where they produce missiles and drones. We actually safeguard all Europe and all the world from any further attacks from Russia or regimes which Putin helps or fails to help. Another thing that I wanted to mention, I was really proud when Zelenskyy spoke about people of Iran, that we stand together with them and we understand how difficult it is, how dangerous it is, how deadly it is sometimes, but freedom must prevail. And he also gave an excellent comparison back in 2020. A lot of Belarus people fought for their freedom after Lukashenko rigged elections for I don't know how many times. He is an illegal president. He proclaimed himself a president, and the world decided not to support Belarus, to keep observing, and right now we are targeted from the territory of Belarus, and it's used by the Kremlin as a platform for drone, missile attacks, and even Oreshnik is located there. So perhaps the strongest message was not to discuss this new world order that is obviously shaping, but to begin acting, and that Europe must turn into this real political power, because now we have a lot in common when we talk about culture, languages, values, but now is the time to act politically and to act militarily. And somehow I do have this feeling that the Ukrainian experience, the Ukrainian resilience, may be useful for the defense of the European Union sometime really soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to my new Anna Danilchuk channel for weekly updates and longer discussions there. Follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Discord. The links in the description of this video. Remember to join me this Saturday 9 p.m. for our live conversation. Check the merch shop with lots of good items that remind the world about Ukraine and our fight and work really well as conversation starters. And thank you so much for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channels. But most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!